We're on the home stretch, so let's talk about DQs and cheating a little bit. There were a lot of DQs at this PT. Certainly 3, I think there were 4. And they come in different flavours. There was one super clear cut, there was one, oh no, don't do that. And then there was one that was controversial and leaves a pretty bad taste in the mouth always round. So let's explore them very briefly. First up, Sang Jung-jae of South Korea. Now, I get very uncomfortable when people decide to post on social media about someone is a cheat. I think that's really problematic. Daniel Fournier, or Fournier, you tell me next time, Dan, which you prefer, posted on social media a while back about some guy who had cheated him, in his view, and several other Canadian players, as it happened, in subsequent rounds of Pro Tour Hour of Devastation. And I didn't follow this particularly closely. Pardon me. As I say, I'm very uncomfortable around the topic in general. I like to think the best of people. I don't like to think that I'm being misled or led up the garden path. I don't like people cheating. I think it's horrible. But I also don't like the kind of person you need to be to screw someone to the wall and get them out of the game. I am not. I'd be a crap policeman, is what I'm telling you. I would believe all the criminals, fundamentally, because I prefer a world in which that would be true. And if you're yelling at your screen now and going, but Rich, that means you're getting robbed all the time and taken advantage of. I understand that. And listen, this is a show called Talking Points, or Talking Points, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to sit here and be deliberately controversial. I'm not a shock jock. I'm not... I can't believe I even said that out loud. I'm not here to be controversial for the sake of it. I'm going to be honest and open, and I'm going to freely acknowledge that you, the many of you who are also smart, because I'm a smart human being, I'm not going to lie, I am a smart human being, but I know lots of you are too. And if you think I'm wrong, there's every chance that you're right and I'm wrong about a bunch of stuff. And so I think the way I respond to DQs and cheating is not necessarily big, it's not necessarily clever, it's just how I am as a person. So it turns out that the person Daniel Fournier, or Fournier, was talking about was Sang Jung-jae. And Sang Jung-jae got DQ'd for drawing extra cards. If you notice, whenever you get a warning, on the back of the result slip, the judge will write down what the warning's for, and those are tracked. They go into a database, which means that it's possible to look at a player's play history and go, what have you been warned for? I was devastated. I had borrowed someone's deck, and this is like in 1998, and played their deck card for card. Literally, they owned the deck in a PTQ. And I got penalised in like round 2 for marked sleeves. I was like, oh my God, forever on my record it's going to show that I once played with marked sleeves. There's a history of that. If I ever play with marked sleeves again, maybe they'll think I'm cheating. So this record exists. Turns out that for the South Korean player, yes, this had happened before. Warnings aplenty on this topic. So, although I don't know him personally, it seems pretty clear cut that this was just someone who went, you know what's better than the right number of cards? More cards. And at that point, it's great that he's gone. And I will never, on this show, be calling for bannings or speculating on whether people will get a ban or not. I think it is better for the community when the actual policemen of the game, the judges and the judge community, get to do that in their own right. But it looks pretty clear cut that this is someone who was properly cheating. Bye. Good. Glad he got caught. I don't like the public shaming of someone. Not even shaming, that's not the right word. And I am uncomfortable with the whole public-facing nature of debate about whether players are cheating or not, particular players. There is an avenue to talk to Wizards and the judge team if you have concerns about a player. And just airing it doesn't feel to me like it achieves an awful lot. That is just me. I am very humble in accepting you responding differently. And you know where I am. If you want to tell me that I'm an idiot, that's fine. So that's DQ number 1. DQ number 2 is the car crash. Oh my God, no! Don't do that to yourself! It features Luis Scott Vargas as the opponent in the match. It's the penultimate round of Swiss, last round of Swiss, somewhere around there, I think round 15. And Yao Ziyal of China is playing Luis, and they're running out of time. They are about to run out of time. And so they go into the routine where you try and work out whether one of you is going to concede or not. And I believe, you should check with the judge that this is true, but I believe it is perfectly okay for player A to say, for example, I'll make up a silly scenario for you. You're at 3, I've got 4 burn spells that each deal 3 in my hand. We're in your turn of the 5th extra turn. If I untap for a hypothetical turn 6, I'm going to burn you to a crisp with my 4 burn spells. Will you concede? And the other player can look at his hand of 2 plains and a forest and go, yeah, I'd be dead, I concede. They can also go, yeah, I'd be dead, but I'm not going to concede. That's well within their rights. But it's possible that player B goes, yeah, well, you say that, but here's the thing. Not only do I have a counterspell for your first burn spell, but it's a counterspell that says players cannot lose life this turn. So you wouldn't win next turn. You'd burn me and you'd burn me and you'd burn, and I'd just counter it and would take nothing. So I'm not conceding. And player A then comes back with, yeah, well, that will save you for 1 turn, but we both know that I've still got 3 more burn spells. How's about it? And player B then either concedes or doesn't. And this dance can go on probably a couple more steps. And then if there's a judge around, which there often is, particularly at a Pro Tour, they say, gentlemen, ladies, it's time to make a decision here. What you can't do is what Yao thought you could, which is go, okay, you've shown me that you've got this in your hand, you know I've got this in my hand. Let's see how the next few turns would have gone. Reach out, look at the top card of my deck, look at the next couple. Oh, yeah, well, I was going to draw this and then this, and yeah, that would have been pretty good. And yeah, I think I would beat you over the next few turns with this draw. But remember when this is happening during a match of Magic. Because once you have the last turn, once that finishes, you can't change the result. So at the point at which turn 5 is done, it's all just over. And at that point, there is no, oh, well, you would have beaten me, so I'll concede after the fact. That thing about you can concede at any time is true while the game is going on. It isn't true after the game has finished. Certainly, I remember a Pro Tour a few years ago where players got into trouble for exactly that. They both got disqualified for colluding and essentially lying to a judge about the result of a match, because the match had finished, it was a draw, and afterwards they decided it was better that one of them had the victory. You can't do that, and you can't look at these cards in-game to see what you think would have happened. Unfortunately, the opponent, in this case it was LSV, who obviously is a friend and colleague, you don't have a choice in that seat. If your opponent has just looked at cards during turn 5 off the top of their deck, you have to call a judge. You can't just go, you can't do that, put them back, which would be the nice thing to do, because the rules say you're just colluding with your opponent if you don't do something about it. You yourself get into abysmal trouble if a judge goes, so what's going on here then in turn 5? Are you brainstorming? No, I'm just looking to see while we decide who's going to win the match. Pardon? So, unfortunately, Zhao got DQ'd. He didn't know he was doing anything wrong. Luis did, but couldn't stop him. And Zhao gets DQ'd. Rubbish, the whole thing. Now, the controversial one seems to be Haoshan Huang. I'll say up front that I know him a little personally. My interactions with him have been very positive. I like him as a person as far as I know him. On the other side of this, if you like, is Eric Froelich, someone I know pretty well and who I like a lot. It turns out that Huang was very public in saying what he didn't like about the DQ, which took a long time to resolve. And the statement talks about how basically the judges couldn't be sure that what Haoshan had done with regard to having 2 energy more or not having that extra 2 energy, couldn't be sure that it wasn't a deliberate mistake. And it was a mistake that was enormously in his favour in their judgment. They walked him through a whole bunch of ways in which having 2 extra energy could be a little bit good, to put it politely. And so he was DQ'd. He went on social media, which I always think is a terrible plan when you're dealing with something as important as this. And Eric Froelich, who, to his credit, strongly believes the things that he strongly believes in. I am not someone who believes a lot of things very, very strongly. I am not confident in my own rightness about a lot of things. Eric really cares about the game. He really cares about honesty. He really cares about the validity of Magic. So when he sees someone who he believes is cheating, he is not a fan. And he's very straightforward about calling people out. So as a result, we had a pretty unedifying spectacle of Haoshan and Eric going at it, which eventually got tidied up and rode back a little bit and ended up in Eric basically saying, hey, does anyone else have any experience of playing against someone who may have been disqualified at the Pro Tour? And at this point, someone who is doing that is, in my view, being a private investigator, essentially. Right? Is saying, I would like to gather evidence to present a case to Wizards. Now, if you think that Haoshan Huang is definitely a cheat and a dirty great cheat and needs to be out of the game, then you can certainly make the case that that is a great public service being done, the collation of evidence. I think there's a problem, though, which is I have seen on numerous occasions at Grand Prix and Pro Tours and even at local game stores, and when I say numerous, I don't mean to imply that this is happening all the time, but I've been in the game for 20 years. You see what people refer to as witch hunts, which I don't think they are, but certainly you see people going, yeah, I lost to him, it was a bit shady, and here's why. And, you know, it is very easy when you lose a bunch of times on Magic Online to think that the shuffler is against you. It is very easy when you lose against me on Magic Online to assume that I have a secret shuffle button that helps Uncle Rich out in his matches on stream. It's very easy to imagine that some of those nice top decks for your opponent aren't nice top decks at all, but arranged top decks. And it's always possible and easy to assume that the player who always seems to have one last card in hand shouldn't actually have that one last card in hand. That fits with the worldview of a lot of us a lot of the time. So if you ask, hey, does anyone else have not very good stories about someone who might be a bit shady? I think you're probably going to get quite a lot of response to that. And not all of them are going to be accurate. Not all of them are not going to be self-serving. Not all of them are going to get you closer to the truth of whether, in this case, it's Hao Shan Huang, but it could be Sang Jun-jae of South Korea, it could be Yao Ziyao of China, it could be me at F&M. I'm not sure it gets you closer to finding out whether they're a cheat. Because guess what? If you feel you were cheated against in a tournament, you should be telling a judge right then and there. And if you didn't, that's dumb. And if you did, that record should be there that there were complaints about a player. So, unfortunately, at this point in the proceedings, I meant to say something profoundly didactic, like, Hao Shan Huang should be gone forever. Eric Froelich is my hero. Or I should be saying to you something like, I think Eric Froelich is disgusting, and I think Hao Shan Huang is entirely innocent, and he's been shamefully treated. And of course, I don't think any of those things. I think Hao Shan Huang is a very good Magic player who may or may not have cheated at the Pro Tour. I think Eric Froelich is a fantastic ambassador for the game and a terrific Magic player who may have gone after someone who is not cheating. Or be getting a cheat out of the game. And I don't know where the truth lies, which is why I'm nervous around tales of DQs and cheating and trying to find reasons why people who get DQ'd should be gone from the game because they're clearly cheats, and it's cause for celebration that we get them out of the game, which I have felt on a couple of occasions. But all in all, the whole business leaves a pretty nasty taste in the mouth. And I guess because in some ways I'm weak, I like a world in which people get along. I like a world in which people aren't cheats. And my tendency is to look away because I'm a little bit squeamish about the idea that there are people who hold the game that I and you love in such contempt that they're willing to cause as much damage as they do to the game and to the pro environment when they cheat. I'm sorry I don't have better answers for you on this, and if you have better answers for me, I'd love to hear them. Post in the comments. I'm always interested in learning how to be a smarter human being, a better human being. Let me know. So that was the world of DQs and cheating. We are almost out of time for this show. So, on to happier things. Let's talk about the top 25. Imagine, if you will, some fabulous music in the background while I tell you that this is the top 25. At 25, it's Steve Rubin. He's down 6. New entry at 24 is Alexander Hayne from Canada. Down 6 at 23, it's Carlos Romão of Brazil. Denmark's Martin Muller is down 1 at 22. Next new entry, it's Matt Nass from the United States on 53 points. Up to 54 and up 3 places at 20, it's Corey Baumeister. New entry, Pascal Menard, the Pro Tour finalist from Canada. He's on 54 points. Up to 55, 18th place, it's Samuel Black from the United States. But he is down 3. Then it's Brian Brown doing the 2015 World Champion. He's up 1. Unchanged, Christian Calcano in 16th. Down 1 in 15th is Javier Dominguez of Spain. Top new entry, it's Mike Sigrist at 14 from the Pro Tour Top 8. Up on 13th place, 61 points, it's Li Shichan of Hong Kong. 12th is Yuya Watanabe, he's down 3. 11th, Shota Yasuoka, also down 3. Brad Nelson drops 5 to 10. Up 1 at 9, it's Sam Pardy on 68 points, 70 points. Up 4, Kelvin Chu of Singapore. Down 3, Martin User at 7. Down 3, Marcio Carvalho at 6. Owen Turtenwelt up 2 on 73 points in 5th. Shared with William Jensen, who's also up 2. And it's down 1 for Palavita Damarosa of Brazil on 76 points. He's at 3. Reed Duke, the world number 1, is now down to the world number 2. And your new world number 1 by a country mile, up 10 places from 11 to number 1. It's the Pro Tour champion, Seth Manfield. Something like that. So that's the top 25 done. Which means we've only got 2 things left to do on the show this week. The first of which is to talk about Warsaw, Atlanta, and Shanghai briefly. And the second of which is this really, really bad joke that you are going to want to miss. I'll tell you when it's going to start. So, Grand Prix this weekend, Warsaw, Atlanta, Shanghai. I'm in Manchester right now in a hotel waiting to go to Warsaw tomorrow. I can't wait. I love Standard the week after the Pro Tour, whenever it is in the season. I'll be interested to see whether it feels a little different this weekend. I can't wait to see the Polish players in action. I'm expecting a very strong showing from them. I can't wait to see how the metagame shifts. I want to see Pascal Menard's deck. I want to see a lot of these aggro decks. I want to see Grixis Control. I want to see if anyone has worked out, is Teema the best? Is 4-color Energy the best? Is it all about Sultai because Seth Manfield did his thing and that obviously makes it favourite of the week? Is Ramanat Red back? Is someone going to play Mardu Vehicles? Is it time for MarduVehicles.com? So a whole series of those websites if you want. Don't forget to visit isitchristmas.com. So that's all going to happen in Warsaw. Now in Atlanta, of course, we've got more of the top 8. Well, I'm expecting Piotr Glagowski in Warsaw, but we're going to see more of the top 8, I'm sure, in Atlanta. Will Seth Manfield turn up with Sultai Energy? Do you know, I'm not at all sure he will. He has an absolute history of being ruthless about a deck being right one week and then gone forever. The next week he'll play something different. Wouldn't surprise me at all if he turned up with Ramanat Red. Could be anything, quite frankly. So we'll see what happens in Atlanta. Meanwhile, by the time those are going on, and by the way, video coverage of both those tournaments live on the Twitch channel at Magic. I'll be in Warsaw running that show. Brian David Marshall, my good friend, will be in Atlanta running that show. You'll see from about round 4 onwards each day live in Atlanta once Warsaw's done. But by the time that happens, we'll already have a Grand Prix champion in Shanghai. And what will the Chinese Magic scene be like? Usually, we can get away with looking at the Japanese players who've gone there, the travelling tourists, basically. But I expect at least 6 of the top 8 to be homegrown this time around, and people we know a bit about as well. So we'll see what happens there. So that's all coming this coming weekend. Next week on the show, which will be a lot shorter than these Pro Tour spectaculars, because God knows I won't have a voice if I keep this up. We'll talk about all the best players, how all the pros did, what the shape of the metagame was, who won, what the top 8 decks were like, respond to stuff that you said in the comments. We'll have a rolling thing week to week. We'll look at the new top 25. There'll be another rubbish joke. All of that's coming on episode 2 of Talking Points, or Talking Points, depending on how you view things. But I hope you have enjoyed on show number 1. What did we do? Well, we said hello. We talked about Albuquerque. We talked about American Airlines and meeting people at the frozen meat counter. We talked about Marcio Carvalho arguing with Javier Dominguez and how they're really good friends. We talked about choosing feature matches and draft pods. We talked about Yuki Matsumoto going 3-0 and then eventually 6-0. We talked about RPTQs and why I do love them really, even though it sounds like I don't at the news desk. We talked about the 2 shapes of standard, which were the energy decks on one side and all the other cool decks that were sitting around the format. We talked about where we got to at the end of day 1 and Channel Fireball's dominance. We talked about where we got to after the end of the second draft and the 6-0 drafters. We got ourselves to the end of the Swiss. We talked at length about the top 8 and the 4 energy decks and the 4 non-energy decks. We talked about Seth Manfield winning the Pro Tour. We talked about every single team in the team series from 37 up to 1. We talked rather messily about DQs and cheating, and we ran through the top 25. We also previewed Warsaw, Atlanta, and Shanghai. And that brings us to right here, the close of episode 1 of Talking Points, or Talking points, depending how you view things. And that means it's time for a really, really rubbish joke. Now, if you decide to go away now, bye. Thanks for seeing you. Please come back next week. We'll have more to talk about on the show. There's always stuff to talk about on the show. For those of you who wish to remain, it is entirely your own responsibility, because I'm not promising you a good joke. I'm promising you, Nate, I'm contractually obliged to give you a terrible, terrible joke. And there's lots of pathos and bathos and other sorts of osses in this one. So you may feel quite moved, quite sad in some ways during the telling of this terrible, terrible joke. So I'm going to give you 5 seconds to walk away. This is your last chance, after which it's the close of episode 1. Oh dear. Your own fault. I'm going to be really honest with you now. I have a pretty significant addictive personality. I have always been drawn, for as long as I can remember, to wanting extremes of things. One of the reasons that I'm the shape that I am is that when I see a bag of potato chips, or crisps as we call them in England, I don't really pay attention to how much they cost or what they're going to taste like. I look how big the bag is, and it looks like a challenge. I like challenges. I like games where there is a percentage that you can complete. I'm a prime candidate for things like World of Warcraft, because hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours can be spent trying to finish it. So I try to be very careful about where I let my addictions out into the world, if you like. So as an example, most of my successes in life, whether that's as a composer or a singer or a performer, or my career in magic, is due to allowing that addiction to come out. I'm obsessed with my work. I'm genuinely thrilled by each new tournament that I get to go to. I love seeing people succeed at the highest level. I constantly spend my time thinking about ways to improve coverage. And that's the good side of my addiction. Now, because I have an addictive personality, I don't smoke. I never have. I never will. Because I wouldn't be a social smoker, having one out in sheltering from the rain in a work break in the morning. I'd be 60 a day, and I'd be dead in 5 years. I do not do, and never have done, drugs. Cocaine, heroin, pot. I daren't. If I did, I'd be dead in 2 years. Because a medium amount, I don't see the point. Part of me just thinks, well, that seems dumb. And if it's an already addictive substance, what chance do I have? None. So I don't do drugs. I also don't drink alcohol. I never have, I never will. Now, that's not strictly true, because I have, in my life, had 1 sip of beer and 2 sips of champagne. One of those was at my own wedding. But I have a father, or had a father, who was an alcoholic, and as a result, I know full well that my propensity to drink alcohol in moderation is 0. And that's a shame, because I think about wine and I think that's really interesting. Like, the world of wine, people are so, it's so intellectual, it's so, I see people having so much pleasure and anticipation and investment, and there's business to it, and there's so much knowledge to it. It seems great. But I've never had a glass of wine in my life. Never will. I look at the world of spirits and I think, oh, That seems really interesting. People have spent hundreds of years trying to work out the best way to blend these ingredients. It's literally alchemical. It's wonderful. But I've never tasted Scotch, and I never will. And even beer. My wife likes to drink beer occasionally. And I go to the supermarket and I love looking at all the labels and all the quirky shapes to the bottles. And we have a lot of, I think they're called micro breweries in the UK. And, with all their special little Witcher Wood and Beecham's this and Fiery Dragon and Welsh Hill, and I'm just making names up now, but seems really interesting. But I've never tried any of them, and I never will. So I have a fairly odd, ambivalent relationship with alcohol. Now, I have no problem with people who like to drink, who like a drink. It's fine. I also don't have a problem with people who want to drink to excess and get utterly obliterated on a Saturday night. But because of my history with alcohol and my own addictive personality, I don't want to be around when that's happening. I don't want to be with them. I want them to enjoy themselves without me there to disapprove. So I'm not traditionally someone who is socially awkward, but if I am in a drinking scenario, I do get socially awkward, and I have coping mechanisms for this. So, against my better judgment, a few nights ago, I was encouraged to join some people on an evening out in Albuquerque. And against my better judgment, I said yes, because there were people I liked. They really wanted me there. It was very nice of them. Someone's birthday. The details don't matter. What matters is that I went. So we go to a wine bar, and it's actually quite pleasant. It's early. It's like 7 o'clock. And there are some couples in there, and those kind of people in their mid-30s and people on dates, and I'm thinking, yeah, you're probably a Tinder date, aren't you? And yeah, you're clearly together, and you're clearly a married couple, and you've got babysitters at home. And I'm playing that game, and I'm having my Diet Coke, and people are having a glass of wine or whatever. And one of the group, who shall remain nameless, is starting to go quite hard. They're obviously getting ready for a big night, as we say in England. And I find myself needing a coping mechanism for this, because they're sitting quite near me, and I'm like, oh God, this is irritating. And I say to myself, I just have this mantra, and it's like, Rich, it's fine, it's just wine bar irritation. You're just irritated in a wine bar. It's just irritation. That's all it is. Irritation in a wine bar, irritation in a bar. It's wine, it's irritation. And just saying that to myself calms me down and lets them get on with enjoying themselves, and I keep smiling and I keep chatting to other people, and eventually I get to move around a little bit, and it's all fine. So then they say that they're going to go to the Irish piano bar up the road, the pub. Those fake Irish pubs that every city seems to have around the world. And I'm like, it's time for me to get an Uber home. They go, nah, come on, Rich, just come for one more Diet Coke. And I am thirsty, so I say, okay, sure. So we go, and it's like, hard down it all in one, it's time for another Guinness now, to be sure. I'm like, oh God, no. And I'm in this Irish pub, and I'm starting to get actually a bit angry. I'm sort of angry at myself for being there, but everyone's getting a bit boisterous. It's later in the evening now, whatever it is, 8:30 at night, whatever. And I'm like, oh God, okay, I'm in an Irish pub, getting quite angry. It's Irish, it's a pub, angry. Irish, angry. Angry, pub, Irish. Angry. I'm in a pub. It's Irish, I'm angry in this Irish pub, angry, okay. And by doing this mantra, I rationalise that it's okay to be angry because I'm in an Irish pub and it won't last forever, which of course it doesn't, and it's going to be okay. Then I make the big mistake. It's now 9 o'clock, 9:30, it's clearly time I should be tucked up in bed, because everyone who's left is basically in the business of getting obliterated. And I should not be around those people at that time. I really shouldn't. But one particular person who I sort of owe a favour to says, please just come for one more Diet Coke. We've got one more place to go, and it's like properly great. Well, they lied. We end up in this Albuquerque bar, and it's a dive. It's hideous. I feel like I'm getting drunk just by breathing. And everyone is there. It's one of those places that, yes, it has 2.5 rickety tables and maybe 6 chairs, but there's 200 people in there, and you can feel yourself sticking to the floor from all the spilled beer, and you're thinking, oh, there's probably vomit mixed in there somewhere, and it's just, it's ghastly. And the whole purpose of everyone in there is just to get hammered. And I'm like, what am I doing here? What am I doing? I'm in this bar and I am getting so angry. I'm so furious. There is a rage building inside of me, and I am in this bar, and it is just American bar rage, 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 bar rage. I was just repeating bar rage. This has been episode 1 of Talking Points, or, if you prefer, Talking Points. I am your host, Rich Hagan, saying thanks for watching or listening, and hopefully thinking. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye!